Today's game will show that no matter how crazy the opening can be, and no matter how challenging the middle game can be, games unavoidably are steered into the end game, and that's where the real play takes place. After e4, my opponent played e5, knight out, bishop c4, which I've played for a very long time. That's the two knights defense. Knight to g5 attack f7 here. And the only real move, there is a bishop c5 defense, which is extremely tactical, but this is the move that is most commonly played. Take. Now, this is a departure from a previous game that I made a video about, which went knight here and knight take f7. This is a much better continuation. Check. So this is all theory, all book. We're not going to explain the theory, but here my opponent played queen d5 when usually the queen is played on d4. So what I did, I just reacted the same way as if the queen were on g4. The disadvantage of this move is at some stage you might be able to be hit by the knight on c3 with loss of tempo. Anyway, I play this. There are rather complex variations, but here he took. And the knight takes. So the opening has settled a little bit. He plays bishop here, which is rather ambitious because he gives me d4 with the gain of tempo. It's still not bad for black because he has pressure on this diagonal, and he can undermine the central pawn with c5. So he has play to justify the loss of tempo. Castle. I just get my king out of the way. You don't want to be forever under the pin situation here with this pawn being pinned and attacks with the knight coming here and checking on f2. You don't want to hang around for that. So he plays this. That's premature. But it's not a bad move because after this and the knight coming back, he has potential threats of coming here. So knight g4 is not a bad move. It looks like a bad move, but it's not. c3. Now that's not exactly a good move, but he had to do something about the knight on the side of the board here. But I took the opportunity to just try to trigger some exchanges, and I knew that I was not as, I didn't have a full pawn advantage. It's roughly equal, even though, because he has a pair of bishops. So rook here, he plays this, which I don't think it's a good move at all. It allows me to develop my pieces quickly, and I had background issues, and now I don't. f6. Just wonder why he makes moves like that, but what would have been a better move? Probably f5. Just go all the way to here. Eventually in this position, there's a 3 versus 2 on the king side. So it makes sense to actually start pushing with f5, g5, and white is not traveling too well. So f6 is a little bit passive. So I took advantage of these to exchange pieces. And so now I've got my 3 versus 1 on the side where the kings are not. And he's got 3 versus 2 on the side where my king is, which is helpful. However, with with the bishops, the pair of bishops is really annoying in this position. Really slows down, and the position is roughly equal. King A7, so he does the right thing. Knight out, bishop here as predicted. So I start mobilizing my pawn on the queen side. He exchanges, and here what happens is these exchanges, of course he prefers the bishop, but these exchanges are increasing the value of my pawns. So when he had the two bishops advantage, my pawn was worth about a third of a pawn. After he exchanged one bishop, my pawn is worth a pawn, and now my pawn is worth a pawn and a half, according to the engine. But it's actually useful to see how the engine rates the position as the pieces come off. So what he's done by exchanging pieces is increased my advantage. Still plenty of play left. So b3 is possibly too passive. In his position, I needed to consider b4. I wasn't too keen on putting, a pawn on the same color as his bishop, so that's why I played b3 instead of b4. King here. Oops. G4, and then he moves the king on the side of where the action is going to be. King up. That's a good move, and this really highlights why I should have played before myself. King here. I take the bishop. He goes there. So now it's just a bit annoying. In this endgame position, I'm just going to mention something. It would have been desirable for white to have played this maneuver if possible, because when you have a situation like that with the knight here, before his king has come in, and you have against the bishop, you're preventing the king with the knight here. You're preventing the king from getting in those squares. And it's very useful to a combination of knight here and pawn here to actually stop a king from entering. But I wasn't able to do it. So I played a4, king here, knight here, defending. And here he played g6. The only real drawing chance he has here is to... It's a little bit cutthroat, but he has to play bishop c3, knight here. He takes the pawn. The pawn starts running. The bishop comes here to intercept the pawn. Pushes bishop here. Now, if white pushes on c7 and exchanges, it's drawn and possibly chances of actually losing. It's quite because this is a pass pawn here that's going to be shielded by the king. So in this position, bringing the king is useful. Move like that, h4. You will see how much play is left in the endgame. It's just staggering how much there is in an endgame like that. King here, king to b5, he pushes there. It's just an extraordinary endgame. Pushes on f4, takes. He has to take there, otherwise it's lost. If he takes the bishop, and this one takes here, the bishop cannot stop the two pawns at the same time, so it's lost. So he has to play the intermediate move of taking here, then that, gaining the tempo on the bishop. Bishop moves away, takes, and who knows? King here, take. The king goes there. The king goes here. There's a huge amount of play left, even though there's so few pieces. Bishop to e6. So basically, the plan is to give the bishop for that pawn, take this pawn with the king and leave white with the king and knight, which of course cannot checkmate, so it would be a draw. King here, bishop check. Now what he does is he actually stop potential swindles. For example, if he had gone, say, to f5, then there's a possibility of playing here, and if he's careless and goes here, then suddenly you have this, and the game is lost. Just chess is actually quite amazing. So I looked at this continuation of bishop c3 and knight e6 here, there, and then this c6. So we looked at this. There's another variation, which is the king on d3. He takes here, king on c4, king here. Try to stop the bishop from getting back to e5 to intercept the pawn. Bishop here to go on f4. Knight b3, threatening to win the pawn and attacking the bishop. He goes here, knight takes, king here, knight here, push, take, go here, then take the pawn, and the king. So now the bishop is holding this side, and the king is trying to go around to stop this pawn from queening. King here, bishop here. It's just incredible how much there is. And that would be a loss, unfortunately, for in this variation. So there's plenty of tiptoeing to be done by black, but the variation is quite incredible. Anyway, in the game, after g6, I played the king up, h5, c takes f5, g takes, and the engine now recommends kings here on c2. And you would assume that later there will be checks. In fact, king here threatened knight c6 check, winning that pawn. But I went the other way. I tried to move my king in support of that passed pawn. Here the engine gives the advantage for white of a couple of pawns ahead. The equivalent of 2 pawns. Now, I'm not sure this is a good move, because there would be variations where the king is helping this pawn, and then the bishop somehow comes into this diagonal here, and white would have the move of taking there because the bishop cannot take. Otherwise, the pawn queens. So it's not a clever idea to put the pawn on that square. So I went here, bishop e3. Now, this is not a good move, and the correct move was to go on f4, c5, bishop g3, c6, bishop here. It's just quite astonishing the amount of play there is. And now this. Bishop goes back there. Takes. Knight here. Bishop there, push. Win the bishop. Takes the pawn. King here. Now that's where it gets interesting, because this leads to a classic position that needs to be done. So it goes there. The king is going to take care of the pawn, but unfortunately the other king is not able to stop because of this position. And now, after king g4, we just safely bring the king back, and there is nothing. The king can never take this knight because the pawn runs. So this is a useful position to know. In the game, after bishop e3, c5, and my opponent resigned. And there's actually quite a bit of play left. You can go back there, and c6. He's just playing moves like that. But this is getting really difficult now for him. Because of some of the weaknesses created. The king takes. We're going to probably take the h4 pawn here. So now what's going to happen is we're going to end up with another runner on this file. So say he takes, knight f5. So the knight from here can potentially assist on the king side, but it can very quickly, in a couple of moves, get back somewhere here. So it would need to play something like this: h4, a4. We're gonna check. He's got to pick the right square. Then you're gonna have knight here, which is stopping the push of the pawn. If you were to push the pawn and we'll give the knight for it, and then he can't stop us. Push, bishop here, push, and he takes here, and then we queen that pawn. So he would need to play something like f5, trying to queen his own pawn, but here we just go there. He can't win. I mean, the king is in the square for this pawn, so the king can stop this pawn. The knight can take care of that one, and you're left with the dilemma of two running pawns, and the bishop by itself cannot stop both of them. So here you would have a3, we take, and then h6, and that's game over. But very interesting game, and this is yet another game that shows how much there is in an endgame.